Thank you, Lascia and Corla. And I welcome the opportunity to be able to raise the issue of reasonable accommodations for the state exams. We obviously have a larger number of students who have recently arrived into Ireland, and they have been rightly encouraged to engage in our education system. Many of these students, Minister, will fall into the category of an English as an additional language learner, which stands, as I say, for English as an additional language, EAL. And I'm thinking primarily about students from the Ukraine, but also students from other places who have recently arrived here and whose level of English would not be sufficient for them to succeed in a state exam environment without additional support. So currently the State Exams Commission allows the use of an approved dictionary during the exam, and at second level many schools will have just completed the Junior Cert and Leaving Cert mock exams before the February midterm. The experience is daunting enough for many students. How daunting must it be for someone who is a beginner level of English? One teacher contacted me from Coláiste Bríd, whom you're probably very familiar with yourself, Minister, Coláiste Bríd in Enniscorthy, describing it as a humiliating experience for the students involved, and she's right. Let's think through the practical, or maybe the more impractical process that has to be followed to answer a Leaving Cert exam during using a dictionary. Some students would have to translate every word of the question, then every word of a comprehension, and then every word of a case study in order for them to understand the question. Then if they again were to gain an understanding of the question, they have to repeat the same painstaking process of using the dictionary to translate every word of their answer. It's just an impossible task, and really the dictionary is utterly useless for these students. We have so many other options available to us to help these students. We need to move away from supplying a dictionary and instead move towards a more tech-savvy and more user-friendly way of helping students with the language barrier. The students will have prior knowledge of lots of different subjects from their education in their previous country of residence, but they're arriving here and the system is making it unnecessarily difficult. Circumstances are already difficult enough for people fleeing war. So if we can remove the English language or the language barrier, we can properly assess their knowledge and allow them to proceed within the Irish education system and have a positive experience. And the Department of Education recognised the need for additional support in schools for these students. Special hours are given to the EAL support, which many schools have availed of, but it seems to me that through the support, that though the supports are removed once it comes to sitting the exam, and to be honest, Ceann Corla, this makes absolutely no sense. So I'd like to commend all of those around County Wexford who are involved in the EAL language support. I've already mentioned Coláiste Bríd. I've also been contacted by St Mary's CBS in Enniscorthy, and I've received contact from Ramsgrange Community School, of which I am a former pupil. And I know that across the 23 secondary schools of County Wexford, great efforts are being made in relation to English as an additional language. We just need the Department of Education to review the supports available at the exam time. So I'm asking you, Minister, please, can you advise the Minister for Education to develop a more user-friendly and a 21st century solution to this problem to allow suitable, reasonable exam accommodations for students whose first language is not English, who've recently arrived here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lascia and Corla, and thank the Deputy for raising this important matter. It is recognised that the curriculum of primary and post-primary is intended to be for all learners from all backgrounds, regardless of gender, socio-economic background, race or creed, and it aims to foster inclusivity where equality and diversity are promoted. Our education system, especially our schools throughout the country, support, encourage and indeed reflect diversity among our students, including in relation to language. The diverse nature of our society means that many of our schools have children and young people whose mother tongue is neither English nor Irish and whose home language is different from the language of instruction of the school. These children and young people, including but certainly not limited to those from Ukraine, may have particular language learning needs which are referred to as English as an additional language, or EAL needs. Specifically in relation to state examinations, the State Examinations Commission, or the SEC, has responsibility for the operation, delivery and development of state examinations. As part of its remit, the SEC provides a scheme of reasonable accommodations at the certificate examinations, also known as the RAS scheme, to support students with a complex variety of special educational needs. The focus of the scheme is on removing barriers to access while retaining the need to access the same underlying skills and competencies as are assessed for all other students, and to apply the same standards of achievement as applied to all other candidates. The scheme provides accommodations for students with a variety of complex special educational needs, including learning difficulties, as well as permanent or temporary physical, visual, hearing, medical, sensory, emotional, behavioural or other conditions. The provision of accommodations for students for whom English is an additional language and who otherwise have no special education needs is the use of bilingual dictionaries. These are permitted by the SEC in state examinations other than in cases where examinations in the candidate's first language, for example, a student whose first language is French, will not be permitted to use the dictionary in the French examination. A language closely related to the candidate's first language, English or Irish, and given that it is the language that is being tested, allowing candidates to use dictionaries in these subjects would compromise the fundamental principle of fair assessment for certification. Bilingual translational dictionaries between the student's first language and English or Irish, that is, without explanation of terms or definitions, are permitted. But it is important to say that electronic bilingual dictionaries, translators, word lists or glossaries are not permitted. Again, this is to ensure fairness for all students as assessed by the SEC. More generally, in relation to children and young people in our schools from Ukraine, the Department of Education is supporting schools in responses to these children and young people, especially through regional education and language teams across the country. In addition, the wide array of resources available includes information in relation to free digital tools, including apps that can assist with text and voice translation, along with allocation of specialist resources to schools that take account of the needs of pupils, including, where appropriate, English as an additional language. The Deputy may also wish to note that the Leaving Certificate examination Ukrainian as a non-curricular language is being developed by the SEC, and the first examination will be available for students sitting the Leaving Certificate in June of 2025. Thank you, Alaska Corley.
I appreciate that you've just come in to answer for the Minister for Education. However, Lascian Corla, we're approaching the second anniversary of the Ukrainian invasion by Russia, and we have over 100,000 refugees fleeing that war, 18,000 of which are students in our schools. And wouldn't it be such an appropriate tribute to say we recognise their pain, that they've left their friends and their families behind, and that their worry is our worry, and that we can make life safer and easier, and that maybe it would send a message that we value you being here and we look forward to you as part of Ireland's future, and assist your integration by ensuring all the necessary supports for English as a second language are in place. So maybe we could think a little bit more about that, Minister, and you might pass that message back. Another very serious issue that has arisen in relation to special education teaching hours, and last week the Department of Education announced significant changes to the allocation of special education supports for school children. And these changes are to include the removal of complex needs as to one of the criteria for special education teachers. This will impact the most vulnerable children in our communities and schools. And I have numerous parents of children with autism and Down syndrome contact me, already exhausted, Minister, from the fight to access assessments and supports for their children, who are now being told that their child may be denied special education supports in school. So the announced changes in September are a major step backwards for inclusivity for special needs children in mainstream education. And I want to ask that the Minister immediately reverse that decision, and instead of cutting teachers' hours for special education, move to improve and increase these supports in schools.
Thank you, Lascian Corla. I think this government can be very proud of its support it has shown to Ukraine and to Ukrainians who have come here to Ireland, and it is one of the best supports of any country in the European Union. And I think our supports in the educational system has quite frankly been extraordinary, and there's very few other countries in Europe that can show the level of integration and supports that has been provided to Ukrainian children in Ireland. And I've been to several other European countries to see and hear what supports they have been provided. The government are very much aware that children and young people whose mother tongue is neither English nor Irish and whose home language is different from the language of the instruction of the school, especially those from Ukraine, may have particular language learning needs. The government is proud of the fact that the Irish education system, our schools, our teachers and our education partners continue to respond to the needs of these students who have particular language learning needs. I've outlined some of the supports that my department is providing to schools in their immediate responses to children and young people, especially from Ukraine, to take into account of the needs of students, including where appropriate, English as an additional language. As part of its remit, the SEC provides a scheme of reasonable accommodations as certificate examinations, also known as the RACE scheme, to support students with a complex variety of special educational needs. The scheme assists students who have special educational needs to demonstrate what they know and can do in certificate examinations without compromising the integrity of the assessment and ensuring fairness for all students. Earlier, I outlined the accommodations under the RACE scheme for students for whom English is an additional language, but who do not have special educational needs, and I have outlined these. In regard to the teaching and learning, the primary resource to inform teaching and learning for all children with and young people, including those with EL needs, is the curriculum from primary school right up to senior cycle in post-primary schools, and additional resources are designed to complement the curriculum. Teaching and learning resources are available from the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment and the National Educational Psychological Service and EDA, which is the support service for teachers and school leaders. Post-Primary Languages Ireland provides dedicated resources for this as well. Thank you. Let's go.